Football is a beautiful game. The drama, the suspense, the euphoria during and after the match is what sets it apart from other sports. And I couldn't find a fitting start to my talk than to share with you all one of the greatest moments in football history. Manchester City winning the title in 2012. The 2011 and 12 tournament was coming to an end, and the fans were at the edge of their seats because it all came down to two bitter rivals, Manchester United and Man City. Now both teams had their deciding matches scheduled simultaneously between different teams. Now what makes this moment all the more special is because Man United won their match 5 minutes before Man City's did. And so they were brief winners of the title. So now Man City had 5 minutes to counteract a 2-1 deficit and clinch the title, steal it away from Manchester United, all in a matter of just 5 minutes. And boy, there was 5 minutes of pure magic in display. Dzeko headed in the equalizer and the score was now 2-2. 1 goal required. And it all came in the 94th minute. David Silva passes it down to Balotelli, and Balotelli passed it to Aguero, who then smashed home the winner and stole the title right from United. Now, I'm not focusing on the moment here. I'm focusing on the one player who was part of this moment, Balotelli. You see, his year in Manchester City was not all that great and appreciated by the teammates and fans, because he took up the game as somewhat of individual glory. He used to display momentary selfishness in the game. He would take it all for himself. But for some reason, in that last run, he pulled off a pass. What really pushed him to do so? I believe that there was someone or something behind him making that decision. The subconscious, ladies and gentlemen, is a complex layer hidden underneath layers and layers of critical thought functions. This was stated by Pierre Janet back in the 18th century. Now let me explain this in simpler terms. We have the brain. Let's divide it into the subconscious and the conscious. When we learn new things, when we meet new people, when we see new things, the information acquired is processed. And there is a moment, a defining moment, before the information gets divided between the subconscious and the conscious. And this defining moment, it's involuntary. We can't decide where the information goes. But it is decided on the basis of how useful it is. Let's say it is not useful. Then it goes into the subconscious. And if it is useful, it goes into the conscious. Now what happens here is, what people see in us is our displaying of the conscious. Every skill, every memory, every thought is on display in the conscious. Now we are human beings. We are a messy species. We have problems and issues coming straight at us. And tackling a few is not that hard, because we have the skills in our conscious layer. We have the necessary skills to do so. But what if we are faced with a problem that is too difficult, too large, too intelligent for our conscious? So consciousness has to step down, making way for the subconscious to enter. And the subconscious influence is carried on by a person who has the entire subconscious manifested into it. This person representing the subconscious is who I call the fourth person. In grammar, we all know first person is when we refer to ourselves. Second person when we refer to a person in conversation. And third person when we refer to a person who is not present in the conversation. You see, the fourth person is somewhat similar to the third person, but only in terms of presence. We cannot physically perceive the fourth person. It exists, like I mentioned before, as a representation of the subconscious. The large chunk of information that's stored in there manifested into this person. Now this person has an influence on us. And let me go back to that example I gave. When we're faced with a difficult issue. Now for this, I want you all to take the brain as a ship. It's steered by a helmsman. Now this helmsman is the conscious. It has to steer the ship, navigate the seas, reach its destination and make it noticeable. But let's say the tides get too rough, the weather gets too unpredictable. The helmsman has to step down and make way to another experienced helmsman who knows his way through these difficulties. I believe that that experienced helmsman is the fourth person, influencing every decision that is made there on out. You know those inside voices you've had in your head that constantly influences the decisions you make and almost telling you what to do? That is the fourth person. And the decisions that you make as a result of it is all because of that single influence from the fourth person. And Balotelli pulling off that pass in the last moment that won Manchester City the title, that was his fourth person telling him that passing is a better decision. Now, I would like to relate this idea, this perspective of mine, with an existing phenomenon, an existing syndrome, the acquired savant syndrome. A person with this syndrome tends to have a resurgence in an extraordinary talent following an episode. And one such victim I would like to take into providing the necessary explanation is Dr. Tony Sikoria, an ex-orthopedic surgeon back in 1994. He was taking a walk in a park in a stormy evening, and he had to place an urgent phone call, so he proceeded onto a phone booth. And what happened after that was life-changing. You see, lightning struck the booth, and through the phone and to his head, and that left him in a coma. But he was lucky to fall in a coma because one of the people waiting in line to use that phone was a nurse working in this hospital. Now, after a few weeks, he woke up from the coma, very much alive and breathing, but there was something extra in him, something new about him. He realized that he had lost some connection to his existing medical skills that he had acquired over a course of years. He realized that it was shadowed by this taste in music. So he acknowledged this taste and tried his best to interpret sheet music. But he needed to implement it somewhere. So he went on to buy a piano, and over a course of months, he practiced and established himself as a virtuoso. He then composed his own tracks and even made his own album, Notes from an Accidental Pianist and Composer. Now I can explain what happened to him using my perspective of the fourth person. You see, when he was struck by lightning is unpredictable. Other than the fact that there is 30,000 kelvins of electricity in that one bolt of lightning, there is still the vast majority of the unpredictability. So let's say that when lightning struck his head, it had affected the electrical activity in his brain pertaining to the medical skills that he had acquired. So he lost some connection to it, and the fourth person realizes that the body is in a coma. There is physical paralysis along with some slight mental ones too. So the fourth person steps in, realizing that he needs to compensate for this loss in the connection, and he implements an existing interest he had for classical music. He did say that when he was a teenager, he enjoyed classical music, and that interest was suddenly overshadowed by his pursuit of orthopedics. But after he woke up from the coma, he acknowledged this taste and became more successful as a virtuoso than when he was a doctor. Now, what I'm trying to get at is all of us have different fourth persons, and each fourth person is as unique as the subconscious in each and every one of you. Now, why do I have this confusing perspective? It's because I'm aware of this presence inside me. I'm aware that a fourth person is behind the decisions I make in front of difficult circumstances. And these influences I've learned to accept, because when you make a decision that seems out of the blue, you still need to realize that whatever decision is made is only because of the information that you fed. It's only because of the information that you absorbed, that you're to think in pure intuition. And I want you all seated here to absorb this fact. There is a fourth person in all of you, helping you, guiding you, without you even realizing it. Accept this presence, which unknowingly may help you lead to true fulfillment.